On May 23, 2022, the Henan Supervision Bureau of the China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, outside gathered hundreds of protesters, holding a sign saying, "Return my savings," demanding that the authorities ensure that the tens of billions of RMB can be returned to depositors smoothly. The local police dispersed the crowd afterward.
这是今年6月26号，现场银保监局。
This is June 26, 2022. In front of the Henan Banking and Insurance Supervision Bureau, customers who have deposited money have fainted on the ground because they cannot get the money. We are all ordinary people, and we have deposited all our money in Henan. Several banks, but we can't get it out now, and we don't know what to do. We still have house loans, tuition fees for children to go to school, and family living expenses all need to be paid. Save us. We really don't know what to do. From 4 a.m. on July 10, 2022, thousands of depositors began to gather in front of the Zhengzhou branch of the People's Bank of China to defend their rights. The depositors held banners and shouted slogans, demanding that the bank return their deposits. Around 11 a.m., the police and some unidentified security personnel dispersed the crowd, and bloody clashes broke out at the scene, and some depositors were injured. To avoid being intercepted by the government, most protesters arrived outside the central branch of the People's Bank of China in Zhengzhou before dawn, and some protesters arrived as early as 4 a.m. At about 5 a.m., a large number of depositors had basically completed their gathering, including the elderly, children, pregnant women and even the disabled. The depositors occupied the steps at the entrance, chanting slogans and holding banners. Around 8 a.m., police and security officers blocked off the street and surrounded the scene. At about 9:40, Qin Hanfeng, director of the Henan Banking and Insurance Regulatory Bureau, and Yang Huajun, deputy director, came to the scene and talked with depositors, saying that as long as the deposits are legal, they will be protected. During the confrontation, Li Gang, the director of petitions in Henan, then entered the scene and shouted to the protesters, telling the depositors not to gather illegally, and they should report their demands online. Attempts by officials to talk to savers have failed as depositors have grown distrustful of local governments. Some of the banners displayed by the depositors pointed to the Henan provincial government, opposed the capriciousness of power, opposed the violent beating of depositors by the Henan provincial government in conjunction with the underworld, opposed the corruption and violence of the Henan government. 400,000 depositors in Henan shattered the Chinese dream. And the banner, against the corruption and violence of the Henan government, in English. A large portrait of the late China's first chairman Mao Zedong was posted on a post at the entrance of the central branch of the People's Bank of China in Zhengzhou. Many protesters waved Chinese flags. Using the flag to show patriotism is a common tactic of protesters in mainland China, where dissent is heavily suppressed, a tactic designed to show that their grievances are directed only at local governments, who support and rely on the central government for bailout. One of them, Ms. Wang, from Shandong, told reporters that the authorities first used a loudspeaker to warn protesters that they had violated the law. Around 11:30, a group of people without police uniforms suddenly rushed up to force the depositors to disperse. During the melee, she was strangled by the neck and pushed to the ground. For security reasons, she did not reveal her name.
They're all guys in their 20s, and they're very aggressive, especially with men, she said. A man with glasses beside me was beaten with blood all over his face, bleeding from his forehead to his nose. I was very scared at that moment. I've probably saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in it, and I really can't hold my breath. I'm very desperate, Ms. Wang said. Because they don't feel the government has the sincerity to solve the problem, they always want to define this as an investment or a wealth management product, and then they can end it, but it's just a deposit, she added. Many protesters were forcibly pulled onto buses and sent to various locations, including schools and village committees. They were required to register information and sign a pledge, promising not to assemble again.
In order to avoid protesters' rallies, the Chinese authorities have adopted the Red Code measure on some depositors who traveled to Zhengzhou, turning their epidemic prevention health codes red, and some rights defenders have been forced to stay at home or restricted travel, which has sparked a controversy. The tsunami of public opinion also drew widespread attention to the scandal. In June 2022, according to multiple media reports, the health codes of depositors of many village and town banks in Henan that were unable to withdraw money normally were assigned red codes in different places, and bank depositors who went to Henan were forcibly quarantined. On June 14, many savers said that their health codes had been changed from red codes to green codes, and the depositors speculated that the red code incident was probably related to the widespread concern. However, there are also savers who say that the health code turns green and then turns red again. The Henan Banking and Insurance Regulatory Bureau and the Henan Provincial Local Financial Supervision Bureau stated in a joint announcement that the first batch of advances will be made from July 15, and the payment targets will be customers with a combined amount of less than 50,000 yuan from a single institution. However, the announcement was still questioned by some Chinese social media users. A netizen criticized in a Weibo post, "That's our savings. We want the right to save and withdraw money freely." Another said, "The announcement didn't provide a clear plan. They just didn't want to pay us back." By the end of 2021, there were 1,651 rural banks in mainland China, located in 31 provinces, autonomous regions and municipalities, accounting for about 36% of the total number of banking financial institutions. Among them, Shandong, Hebei and Henan have the largest number of village and town banks, with 126, 110 and 86 respectively. According to the statistics of the People's Bank of China, as of the second quarter of 2021, 122 rural banks were classified as high-risk institutions, accounting for about 29% of all high-risk institutions. In fact, it is not uncommon for village banks to launder money in violation of regulations, disclose false information, and sell agency insurance products in violation of regulations.